Let's get into some predictions then this year. So Lando versus Max. Who do you think comes out on top?
I still think that I feel like a lot of people have written Max off. I've seen a lot of predictions where people are like, he's going to finish third, fourth. And Red Bull, of course, you know, they're definitely on a downward trajectory. But what I find kind of fascinating is even at the end when that was the case towards last year, you look at the actual points between Lando, Charles and Max was there because he's got that consistency, pushes it over the limit. But even stuff like Mexico, which was frowned upon, and people didn't like it, it's almost like a net gain for the way he drives and he's thinking about every point. And that's why he's going to be so hard to beat, because you've seen McLaren, we don't want to have a number one driver or all this kind of stuff. So even if McLaren have the best car, Ferrari have the second best car, Red Bull are just Team Max, and he is going to get the maximum points every single race weekend for that car. Whereas, you know, Oscar Piastri wins a race and Lando's fourth, then Lando wins and Oscar's like sixth. And they're kind of taking points off each other for the whole season. And over a championship, I just think you can't write Max off, because even if the car's not there, he's going to be getting podium after podium after podium, the odd win when, look at Brazil, for example. And he's going to be very hard to beat. So I would still back him, because I think, I just think he's definitely not like invincible, but he's shown that he can win the championship in so many different ways now.
He is robotic.
So impressive. He is impressive.
But someone like, I have no doubt, Lando, Leclerc, even like I dare say like Hamilton, like on their day, they can, I'm not going to say like beat Max like by miles. On their day, they can beat Max, or they can definitely hold the candle to him. But
it's the consistency.
All of these drivers, I have it, Jordan has it when we're racing. We have these weekends where we'll dominate and be super quick, pole position, win, whatever. And then a weekend or two later, you could be really struggling. You know, you're outside the top 10 in what we're racing in. You see these natural kind of peaks and troughs in drivers' performance. But Max, I never see it.
It's so true. And you look at Lando last year, he won, I think it was Zandvoort by 20 seconds. And it's like, right, big statement race, simply lovely.
Yeah.
Right, he's a championship contender now. The next race, getting passed by Piastri in the next corner, and he has a bit of a difficult weekend. And then you go to Singapore, he wins by 20 seconds again. You're like, right, Lando's back. He's going to win a championship. And then the next race. And people, I think it was very much a kind of lesson of that year when Max won all those races in a row, shows that it's not that easy. To be that good every single weekend, because you do naturally kind of go up and down. It's a long, grueling season, and drivers do go up and down in performance. And you know you're going to need Lando and Charles, who are amazing drivers, no doubt. But this year they're going to need that like extra step where they can win like 3 races in a row, for example, which you don't tend to see from them.
Yeah.
I don't think they maybe even have done in their career yet. So that's where it's going to be the difference. If they can start stringing together like dominance, basically.
Yeah. And the thing with Max, I don't know if they've adjusted. The thing he was smart with, which some people don't like, some people rate, is the ability to know the rule book so well that he will do anything as long, to like this whole rule of making sure he's a car ahead. I don't know. Are they adjusting that? I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything yet.
They tried to, but this is always the funny thing, that they will change the rule, and the one that's going to abuse it is Max. I thought that with when Max got that one place penalty for Russell, and I said immediately, like, if you give Max a penalty for that, he will just drive into the back of cars, slam the brakes on, and go, he's blocked me. And he's going to be the one that twists the rules. Like, how many rules have changed because of Verstappen? Like, you can't go side by side. The safety car restart gets rid of it. You can't do this move, and it's always changing. And that was something that Michael Schumacher had And you saw with Michael Schumacher, they're very similar characters in that sense that he'd push the limits to what he could do, and then they'll change it and it'd be like, all right, well, I'll do something else.
You know what that is? Is this infatuation to win the championship? Like, don't get me wrong, I know people like Lando want to win, obviously, and they can win a championship, but someone like Max and Schumacher, they will do anything.
Anything, yeah.
And what I think is really proved that to me, we just released a clip the other day on Mexico race between Lando and Max. And the first one was a bit of a grey area where he like pushed him off the track.
You've seen it before.
Yeah. And the next one was blatantly
desperate. Yeah. It's a I know that you've got past me and you're probably going to win the race because you're going to pass the Ferraris, so I'm going to basically shove you out the way.
And what I think Max has that Lando doesn't is Lando wouldn't do that out of respect for Max.
Yeah.
Max doesn't care. He's friends with Lando up until I think the championship's on the line. The championship is the most important thing. I think for Lando, championship's important, and in line with that is his morals and his respect.
Yeah.
You know, and Max's
Lewis
morals
the same,
go
I guess.
Morals go out the window with Max once a championship's on the line.
Yeah, and he does not care. You know, he's there, and that's why, you know, probably he's getting booed at an event because he's the one that's kind of beaten the British drivers to the championship, and he doesn't care if he throws it into the corner, and it's that mentality of like, get out of the way, I'm coming through, and if we crash, we crash, that a lot of people don't like.
Senna had that.
Yeah, and it's that kind of mentality that at the end of the day, if he's winning championships, you look back. If social media had existed during the Michael Schumacher era, it would be exactly the same thing of like, oh, he's so dirty. Well, and now you look back and go like, what a great champion. He's one of the greatest of all time. You know, GOAT debate, all that kind of stuff. And you almost like forget about that side because at the end of the day, he's got 7 championships next to his name. And Max is the same. That, you know, would Max be like, oh, people won't like me, and he doesn't do Mexico, and be like, oh, I'm fine with 3 titles then? No, it's not how he works. He will just do everything to win.
Yeah, because anyone that knows him says he's a really nice guy. Like, away from, you see the sim race he does, the community, like, he's actually seems like
It's just very normal.
He's
It's just very normal.
community service.
community service, yeah.
Such
which
a
I'm
wholesome
sure he
man.
loved. Yeah, so wholesome. Yeah. Lewis, how does he get on, do you think, in Red?
I think he's going to do a good job. I personally, and it's maybe a bit of a hot take, but I personally think that his last season has been quite exaggerated just how bad it is, because he wasn't that far away from George Russell. I think his head wasn't really not in the game, but he's probably already thinking about Ferrari and moving on.
Yeah.
So for him to be that close to Russell, who's a highly, rated driver, people were talking as if Hamilton was like completely finished. He's terrible. And don't get me wrong, his qualifying was not great, but I think they were the closest teammate over that season, like percentage of points wise. So he was incredibly close there. The season before, he was brilliant as well, and quite an underrated season, even though he didn't get the victories. And I think he'll just have like a new kind of lease of life going to Ferrari.
Yeah.
Whether and that whole dynamic with Leclerc is going to be so interesting, because I think Leclerc needs to be a bit more ruthless. I think he needs to kind of stamp his authority and be like, no, this is my team. But can you do that when Hamilton's your teammate?
I think with Leclerc, I see a knife edge in his emotions and performance. Like he's fantastic up until this knife edge, and then it falls off a cliff. Like you've seen it sometimes where he's leading a race. Granted, sometimes Ferrari at Monaco and stuff like that have really screwed up strategies.
Yeah. But he made mistakes as well, didn't
but
he?
He's made there's one thing jumps into my head is once he was leading a race at Paul Ricard and just lost it all by himself. He does tend to do that. Qualifying in Miami, was it last year or the year before? He lobbed it into the wall when he was like sets a blinding first sector and then loses the car.
Yeah.
I wonder what now that because he hasn't had. I think it's unfair to say he hasn't had like a proper mix-up challenge with someone like Sainz. Sainz is a fantastic driver and did hold the candle to him, but most of the time it was Leclerc ahead, and even if it was by 800ths of a second.
Yeah.
But also, you sensed in the last couple of years with Sainz and Leclerc, Sainz is number 2, Leclerc is number 1.
Yeah.
Now, what's going to happen? Because
Hamilton can't be a number 2.
Hamilton is not going to be number 2,
no
and
chance.
Leclerc is not going to be number 2.
No. I think their strategy will be improved because as soon as you have Lewis come in, it's not like when Carlos came in, he was younger, wasn't as established as Lewis. Also, Leclerc's been there since he was a kid, right? As soon as you have this adult figure in Lewis, this legend, they'll probably up their strategy a bit. And also, I think he'll put pressure on Leclerc in the races, especially because we talked about Leclerc making some mistakes in the races. Lewis doesn't make those mistakes.
No.
So that's where he'll put the pressure on, I think.
Yeah, his racecraft is unbelievable. You saw it in like the final races, even the races where he qualified so poorly.
Yeah.
Almost became a running joke where like he could start last, Russell start pole, and they'd almost like finish together on track.
Find each other,
Yeah. And Hamilton's not going to go in there. I think it's an amazing story for Formula One, but it's not been said enough that if you were Charles Leclerc, and you must be like, what? Why? Because that's his team. Like, it's been built around him, and he's the golden boy of Ferrari. And can you be the golden boy number 1 when your teammate is Hamilton? And there's so much kind of hype, and understandably, because he's the statistical greatest of all time. But I would personally, if you were in that situation, and this goes back to us talking about the championship and how Red Bull have openly said, we don't need another Max Verstappen in the car. Whatever Perez was doing last year, Max still won the championship. And, we get to the third race of the season and say Leclerc's won the first 2, Hamilton's winning the race, Leclerc's behind him. They're not going to get Lewis to move out the way.
No.
And that kind of thing
asked.
is going to play into the advantage of someone like Max, who is just a one-car team. Because, if they keep taking points off each other, it's great for him, isn't it? And I personally don't think they're going to collide on track. I just think it's going to get quite messy with, I need to pit first. You've seen those moments with even Sainz where like he passed him in Vegas and how upset Charles got by that. And I don't think they were even favouring Sainz there. It was just kind of like, okay, be on your way. They're not going to want to tell Lewis, don't overtake Charles if you're faster.
Imagine.
But this is where that race that you just mentioned where Charles was really upset. He came on the radio and said some expletives. I've seen that happen quite a bit with Charles, where I think he doesn't have that Max Lewis mentality. I think Lewis is actually quite a dark horse in the way that you'd think face value, he's kind of like, team player, always praising the team, blah, blah, blah. Behind the scenes, he works, but he's also ruthless with...
He's done a very good job of... He's spoken about as the only champion that's never had to push beyond and be a bit unsporting and stuff. And there have been moments where, like I think he let Bottas back past after he'd said things like that. But let's not forget, there's been those moments where he's like, I'm not slowing down for Nico and stuff.
He's
got it in it.
True.
But he also has this slight, definitely behind the scenes, like mind game side of things. He's got that edge to him where I don't think Charles does. I think Charles
more innocent.
Has too many times put his trust in the team and it screwed him over, and he's too much of a team player. So I'm really intrigued to see how this season's going to go. And on what you said earlier about how it seems like Lewis will have a new determination at Ferrari. It's a new start, and the reason he was not coasting last year, he was good, but not as good as we've seen him before. Me and Jordan can relate to this, where there's some years where you're in a car, or weekends where you've got the car for pole, you're feeling really good in the car, the team's behind you, morale in the team's great, you go out and perform, and you do get pole, and you do win the race. then there's years or certain weekends where you know there's an issue with the car, you haven't got the setup right, and you know like P7 or P8 is the best you can do. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is P3, maybe it is P2, but because you know it's not P1, you've lost that care anymore. You need a change, and I think this year going to Ferrari, I think he's found a new lease of life. Everyone's commenting on his age and has he lost his edge? I don't think it's that.
Look at Alonso that year where the Aston was actually good. He was on the podium like every race, and it was good.
True.
I want to talk about Liam Lawson.
Yeah, I was actually thinking having watched like Liam, we know his coach Enzo Mucci, and it's going to be interesting how that plays out, because I think these guys going to Red Bull have got to be smart enough initially to know what they're going in at, right? With Max. But we'll relate to this. Like, every driver has an ego. At some point, even if you say, look, I'm going to be fine with second right now, at some point that grinds down on you, I think. Yeah. And there's a point where we've seen with other Red Bull teammates, the patience is maybe deteriorating, and that's where these crashes happen. I'm really hoping like Liam, because he's such a ruthless character, he's a hard racer, that he goes into this and just keeps in his own lane.
It is so true. Yeah, he needs to go in, and the only way I think to succeed as Red Bull is to go in, and some will say this is not the right mentality to have, but not everyone can be a Max Verstappen. So you have to go in and go, well, I'm not here to beat Max. And that must be incredibly hard for a racing driver, because the whole thing of Formula One is impossible. You beat your teammate. Yeah. That is your benchmark.
Any racing.
Any racing, whatever you're doing. But yeah, Red Bull haven't hidden the fact that they've even said it about Perez when he was doing his downfall. Is having bad race after bad race. Because he was having those really bad races and stuff. And I think they were saying, Helmut Marko, who loves to have some spicy quotes here and there, said, he thought he could beat Max, and that was his problem, which shouldn't be the case. But that is, there is a trend at Red Bull. You can't deny it. Perez is not a bad racing driver. You go back to 2019, he was the most lauded guy. Like, how can he, he should be on the F1 grid, he's going to lose his seat. And everyone was basically calling for Alex Albon's head, saying he's rubbish, get Alex Albon out because Perez is the GOAT. And actually, and it's so funny, but they were. Like, you look at all that media narrative around it, it was like, Perez is the best. He just won a race from last in the Racing Point. He's so good. Get him in the car. And he ended up being worse than Albon. Yeah. So, it's a trend. It's going to be incredibly difficult for Liam. But yeah, you're right. He has to kind of stay in his lane a bit, which is a crazy thing to say. Because will he? Because he's shown already that he's quite a fiery character.
Big time, yeah.
We said this on our podcast, that he had a great opportunity to go to Red Bull in the first place, even with the very little experience he had. And in literally his first race, he's passing Perez at the Mexican Grand Prix, and like,
it's mad. Yeah.
And you think, this is not what the team need of you. Which he learnt from, and he said, that I've learnt from this, it won't happen again, kind of thing. But yeah, he's got that fire in him. But this is the thing with the Red Bull teammate. I've heard a lot of people go, "Oh, Liam's gone in too early," but they tried experience with Perez and it failed. So, who is it? Just a poison chalice to be Max's teammate?
Well, the answer to who, I think Yuki has drawn the short straw, because he let's be honest, don't get me wrong, I love Liam. I've trained with him a couple of times at iZone back in his F3 days. He's such a driven, super quick, and I think his main strength, if he had like a kind of like FIFA card, would be
or top trumps,
be
racing, wheel to wheel. One of the best.
He's fantastic. I hope he doesn't have a which I think he's more mentally strong. No disrespect to Albon or Gasly, but I hope that doesn't happen to him. The Gasly Albon situation, especially now that he couldn't get away with it. He can't get away with it this year like Perez could in his first couple of years because the car was so dominant.
Yeah.
So if he was half a second off Max, it was still P2 or P3. Whereas now,
Yes,
half a
15th,
second, half a second's going to be massive. He's going to be outside the top 10 potentially. But where was I going with that? Oh yeah, Yuki. What's your opinion on that? Because he performed so well last year. He has had this really great progression. I thought when he first came into F1 that he was going to be this kid that's kind of spoiled, can't be asked to do any training, crashes too much and is sometimes quick, and then he's going to depart the sport at some point. He's sorted his stuff out, and he's clearly very naturally talented because he's definitely not the most driven driver on the grid. He is incredibly naturally talented. He did a great job last year, outperformed pretty much every teammate.
Very likable character, which
Yeah.
is part of Formula One, however much you say, is part of why Daniel Ricciardo came back. He had a massive fan base and stuff.
Why do you think he didn't get the drive?
I mean, there's a lot of people that say that potentially the Honda connection and the fact that they're leaving could be an issue. That, he's, even if he gets promoted to that team, Honda will be leaving next season. So where does he go from there? Is his future at Aston Martin? The problem there is you've got Fernando Alonso, who's finally got Adrian Newey car, who will never leave until he's 60 if he can win a championship with Adrian Newey, and Lance Stroll, who's never going to get fired. So,
Do you think he never will?
surely not. I just can't see it ever.
No, I can't see it. I think if
Firing his own son.
Verstappen was knocking on the doors, I think they'd fire Alonso.
No, but
honestly.
yeah,
I think
surely
they
not.
would.
They'd get Alonso
They
to
would.
move on.
They
yeah.
would,
Surely,
yeah, they
yeah.
would.
I think
I
they would.
believe that.
Oh, we just needs to drop his son, mate.
I know. Because all this money, all this investment, and it is weird. Yeah, it is weird that, it's a very strange situation that they talk about Aston Martin being Team Lance and it's all his thing, but why are you putting Alonso next to him if it's Team Lance? Like, he's not going to beat him. And same with like the Verstappen rumours. But yeah, like maybe the future is Yuki Tsunoda going there. I feel very sorry for him because you can tell he wanted the seat and he almost kind of made a little dig at Red Bull, kind of saying like, maybe I just need to win every race or something.
Yeah.
Or I can't remember what he said, but something quite sarcastic. Because the thing that, as someone that loves Tsunoda and would love to see him in a top car and see what he could do, when he joined, completely agree with you that he crushed. Like, I think he was actually very lucky to continue on for the next year. But his improvement has been amazing. And he got put against De Vries, who, again, he had that one race, didn't he, at Monza, and everyone was like, oh, this kid's really good. We'll get De Vries in. Yuki beat De Vries, and they got Daniel Ricciardo in. And the whole narrative around Daniel Ricciardo was, well, if you're going to be at Red Bull, and if you do well, you'll be at Red Bull. And Yuki Tsunoda beats him, and they just get rid of Daniel. They don't promote Yuki. And then equally, Lawson comes in. And Lawson, Yuki didn't trounce Lawson, but I think he beat him 6-0 in qualifying. Did a great job. Had a really good year. And is probably thinking, you're telling me that all these drivers coming in, all they have to do is beat me and they get a Red Bull seat. And I'm beating them all the time.
Yeah.
Why aren't I getting a chance? So I can understand why he's kind of miffed by that.
I think it's just the way he carries himself and his... I think Red Bull have openly spoken about the problem with Yuki is they're worried about his mindset. And definitely when he first joined F1, I mean, his English was even worse than it is now. Also swearing all the time, but also had this attitude of like, you saw it in Drive to Survive. It was like, oh, I don't want to go for a run. Like,
It didn't pay him in the best light, although it was great for the TV show.
Yeah.
It probably didn't help.
Yeah, but I think like, how can you be in the top? What other top sport can you be in? And he must be so naturally talented.
Yeah.
If you're putting in no effort, can't really be asked for the sim. Maybe not no effort, but you're in the elite level of a sport, and you can't really be asked to go on a 5K run and you can't really be asked to do the simulator stuff as much as you should be.
Yeah.
It's like the fact that he did perform at that level, and now he's clearly put a bit of effort in. That's where this performance is coming from. I really hope he gets a chance at a top team at some point. He's just not very brand friendly, is it? You can't put him in front of a room of sponsors and get him to do a talk, can you?
No. But he is a character. He's weirdly like a really well-loved character.
He is likeable,
like him. And
he's like the Formula 1 teddy bear.
Yeah, but and his kind of swearing and the way he's kind of had that attitude almost fits that Red Bull kind of vibe anyway, which you think could actually be quite good for them, but they obviously don't think so.